UFC 312 predictions. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Middleweight gold on the line in the rematch this week at the top of the card. Dricus du Plessis defends the very title he took off of Sean Strickland a year ago. That fight was extremely close. The fan vote was split. The judging was split. And you were really only happy with the result based on who you had money on, let's be real. But as far as choosing a winner for a fight like this is why we love rematches, because we have direct evidence of what a fight between these two is going to look like, especially with a recent one like we have here. In that first fight, Sean Strickland clearly won round 1 and round 5. Dricus du Plessis clearly won the 4th round, with the 2nd and 3rd being pretty close. It could have went either way. I do think that Sean Strickland did enough and should have won the fight. I think it was close. I don't think it was a bad decision that it went the other way. He did more damage overall, and the takedowns that Dricus du Plessis got, while they were timely, while they were clutch, they really didn't materialize into much. I think they held a bit more weight than they should have, but what I like about that performance is I like that Sean Strickland took the 1st and the 5th cleanly, because he started better and he ended better. I think a lot of the success early in the fight just came from the style that Sean Strickland fights with, because du Plessis spent a lot of the first round just getting picked apart at range from that jab, that teep, and I know a lot of people watching, they don't love to see Sean Strickland teep his way to victory, which I totally get, but if you spend some time training, you know that getting teeped is ass. It's not always the most painful thing, but it's frustrating because it disrupts your timing, disrupts your rhythm, and it always sits in the back of your mind. Like, I know when I'm about to close distance, I gotta watch out for that lead knee coming up a little bit because I might just get something right in the breadbasket. So teeps are annoying, and Sean Strickland does as good a job of anybody in the sport today at throwing them and mixing them in with his punches. And as for the 5th round, he really took it to Dricus du Plessis, letting his strikes fly. He actually threw and landed more strikes in round 5 than any other round. And I think that's important here because I think he can do that to most guys in the division, right? So you've got a fight that it's probably going to go the full 5 rounds. Sean Strickland is notoriously durable. Same thing could be said for Dricus du Plessis, so we probably have 25 minutes on our hands again. With that being the case, you can almost write in a 10-9 in the 5th round for Sean Strickland, which I think is huge here. Now on the other side, I think we're going to need a lot more out of Dricus du Plessis this week for him to keep his title, because the takedowns probably aren't going to serve him as well this week. I don't think the judges will weigh them as heavily. I don't think he's going to be able to land as many of them. I don't think takedowns are going to work this week. I think he needs to strike his way to victory if he is going to win. Now, ways that he can have more success at striking range, I would say with more kicks to the body and to the head. He can't really kick Sean Strickland in the leg because his vision is too good. He's going to check him and it's just going to be bad for everybody involved. You don't want to throw him. But Dricus du Plessis was having success with that body kick and with that high kick, just throwing it out there, giving a look, landing through the guard. That's more than enough. I would say the other half of the equation is really committing to his punches. He just needs to trust his chin and his power, because Sean Strickland, he lands a lot, but he's not really putting anything on these strikes. So Dricus du Plessis is going to have to take one to give one, maybe eat 1 or 2 on his way in, or just have to punch through the guard, because Sean Strickland does a really good job of like extending his arms and parrying punches in a really weird way. So it's up to Dricus to just be that tank, be that bully, be that marauder, and kind of punch through that guard, maybe eat a jab or a check hook on his way in so that he can land the harder, bigger punches that he's capable of landing. The problem is, it's a lot easier said than done, because Sean Strickland's still landing, he's still scoring. While it doesn't look like he's landing a lot, I know I say he's not putting much on these punches, but I'm sure if I was eating some of these punches, I'd say, oh, that's probably quite a bit. So to be fair to the champion, it's a lot easier said than done to go just, oh, throw yourself in the fire, take a couple shots because you have more power, because we don't know what it's like in there for real. So with all that, to me, I think there's more to like on the Sean Strickland side. He arguably should have won the first fight. He's going to win the last round of this fight. And as far as betting goes, this is going to be one of the best price tags you're ever going to get on Sean Strickland. At the time of recording this, he's sitting at nearly a 2-1 underdog, which is kind of crazy because the only other times in his UFC career, or really in his professional career, when he's been a bigger underdog than where he is this week, is when he fought Kamaru Usman and lost, rightfully so, and when he fought Israel Adesanya and won that fight. Outside of that, you've never gotten this kind of pricing on Sean Strickland, so I feel like you have to take a shot. And not for nothing, win streaks are very hard to come by and they're very hard to maintain in the UFC, and Dricus du Plessis isn't necessarily like due a loss, but he has had some close calls in the UFC, and I'll probably dig a little bit deeper into that in the final picks video later in the week. But as of right now, give me the former champion here to get it done. I think he keeps the fight standing, executes a good game plan, picks Dricus du Plessis apart for most most of the fight and wins 48-47 on the scorecards. Give me Sean Strickland to win this fight by decision and new. Finally, we get to see Tatiana Suarez in a UFC title fight. Long time coming. We all knew she would get to this point eventually if the injuries weren't going to stop her from doing that. And here she is, healthy enough. She's been one of the most dominant grapplers in the history of the sport as far as the women's divisions go, and she's got a chance to show it off here against one of the best to ever do it. And it might serve her well. Zhang Weili has not been this picture of perfection as far as takedown defense goes. She's got like a 50% takedown defense. She's been taken down by lesser grapplers in the past, and she's winning a lot of fights with her own wrestling, her own grappling. So even if there's a situation where she's trying to work her grappling, that might not serve her all that well. That might play right into Suarez's game, where Suarez ends up executing a sweep or stuffing a takedown, circling to the back and getting in the driver's seat, and that's no good for the champ. That would be worst case scenario. Now on the feet, it's not even close.
Barbecue chicken alert! Barbecue chicken alert!
Tatiana Suarez has nothing for Weili at striking range, and therein lies the problem for the challenger, because when you look at Zhang Weili, or at least when I do, I think Tiger Woods, Roger Federer, Katie Ledecky. I think excellence. And most of us know that excellence is not a result of performance, it's a result of preparation. Zhang Weili and her team know that if this fight stays standing, it's going to be one of the easier title defenses she'll ever have to make. Because while Tatiana Suarez is a special talent, this isn't Joanna Jędrzejczyk, world-class kickboxer. This isn't Rose Namajunas, elite MMA striker. This isn't Amanda Lemos, one-shot knockout power. This isn't Yan Xiaonan, who can find your chin in a flash and has sneaky hand speed. This is closer to the Carla Esparza fight than any of those. A one-dimensional grappler who needs the fight in her world, and I think that's probably what the emphasis in Zhang Weili's training camp has been. Takedown defense, distance management, not overextending, not chasing the finish, letting the finish come to her. Boxing heavy approach as well, right? Don't throw too many kicks because Suarez might be able to catch it, get on top, and then she's in business and you're not. Other important factors would be to not settle in one position for too long, don't get pushed up against the fence. So I expect that from Zhang Weili this week. I think she's going to implement the proper game plan to get it done. Boxing heavy, strong hips, deny takedowns, and I don't think it's going to take a whole lot of time on the feet for her to find the shot that ends up hurting Suarez and getting her out of there. I think she gets it done inside of 3 this week. If Suarez can get control, it's going to be a tough one for the champion, but if not, it's going to be an absolute walk in the park. So I think it's going to look like one-way traffic, one way or the other. I think the best bet for this fight is that the fight doesn't go the distance. Hammer that like your life depended on it. And just as a little pro tip, you take those winnings and you put them on Jalen Hurts to score 2 touchdowns at plus 550. Thank me later, uno mas. But the pick here is going to be Zhang Weili to win this fight by knockout and still. Next, we have heavyweights on the main card. On one side, you have UFC veteran Justin Tafa, true one-shot knockout power. That's what we'd like to see from heavyweights. Jamal Pogues, take notes. We've seen him dispatch 4 of his opponents in the UFC all in under 2 minutes. So listen up for those of you that didn't listen up last week when I said take the under half a round in the Terrence McKinney fight. You could do the same this week because he gets guys out of there in a flash, and Tallison Texiera has made a career of doing the same thing. Even in his fight on Contender Series that got him into the UFC, that was a slugfest that you would have thought watching that it was lasting a lot longer than it was. It was less than 2 minutes. And he not only won that fight, but he ate some good shots in that fight, showed some heart, stayed poised in the pocket, landed a clean right hand that completely turned his opponent around, had him knocked out before he even hit the mat. And at his size, he can probably make a lot of noise in this division that's always looking for young talent. Undefeated, finishes everybody, he's massive, he's Brazilian. The UFC couldn't be happier with a prospect. But guess what? I don't care. I don't care what they're looking for because I expect Justin Tafa to hand him his first loss and teach the young man a lesson and probably do it in under 90 seconds here. Reasons being, this is Texiera's debut. I expect some stiffness.
You're stiff as a board.
Expect some nervous energy. Even in the Contender Series fight, he didn't just walk through this guy. He was eating a lot of shots. At one point, it looked like he was about to eat one too many. And he showcased some classic tall guy defense, which at 6'7" is expected. He's gone his whole life being able to just back up. Let me just lean back a little bit. Nobody can reach my head, and I get it. But against guys in the UFC, that's really not going to fly consistently. So I worry about the tall guy defense from him, especially because Justin Tafa does a really good job of ducking and throwing that left hook like we saw the one that knocked out Austin Lane. Slight level change, gets his head off target, and then he's able to close distance, just creep up with his feet a little bit, and then let that left hand fly. He can do it in a flash, and I think Tallison Texiera's got to be mindful of that. And of course, there's a situation where he can counter Tafa in between that sequence, right? Land that straight right hand while he's coming in and probably knock him out like he did to the guy in Contender Series. But I think he's going to be a little bit uncomfortable with the moment. And the reason why I say that is because it's his debut, because it's on a pay-per-view, because it's on a main card, and it's in Australia where this guy's never lost before. You look at Justin Tafa's record, never lost in Australia. Not only that, but this dude was supposed to fight Lucas Brzeski in the Apex and pulled out with undisclosed injury. I don't like that at all. That's the easiest fight he would have gotten in the UFC, and for that injury to not be disclosed seems a bit sus. If you know what it is, put it in the comments, because I couldn't find it. But even with minor injury, I still think you got to take that fight because of the opponent that you have, and because it's in the Apex. It's in familiar territory against the guy who can't hold a roster spot. Now you got to travel to Australia to fight a guy again who's never lost there in front of his people on the main card. I don't like it. So give me the undersized underdog to get it done here. Again, take under a half a round, sprinkle in some Tafa if you want, but give me Justin Tafa to win this fight by knockout. And real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. And as far as likes go, because it's the new year, trying to get some good juju in there, let's try to hit 1,500 likes. Never been done. Maybe it has. Oscar's gonna run the numbers, but we move on. Next, we have a fight between James Crute. He's fighting Rodolfo Bellato this week, and I know what you're thinking, Kunith, it's Jimmy Crute. I don't want to give him that Jimmy respect. He's got to earn it, because it's really been tough for him. He hasn't won since 2020, winless in his last 4, finished in 3 of his last 4 fights. One was against Anthony Smith, sustained leg injury in that fight, stops the fight. All right. Jamal Hill made quick work of him, knocking him out in under a minute, and Atomic Alonzo Menefield guillotined him in a rematch after he battered him in a fight that went to a draw, which Menefield really should have won. And it's tough because James was once thought to be the next big thing at light heavyweight. He even submitted Paul Craig in his UFC debut. Not many guys do that. Unfortunately for him, he hasn't put it all together. Now, he has had some time off, and maybe, just maybe, he's able to get back to his winning ways. If not, he's probably going to be a crab fisherman or whatever Australian burly men do for work. Now, on the other side, Rodolfo Bellato dug deep against Ihor Potieria. He was getting touched up all round 1. He gets dropped early in round 2. Looks like he's out. The commentary team's like, oh, he's out. He's not out, but it looked like he was on his way out. I have to say, in that fight, I get that he was at like a speed disadvantage as far as striking goes, but his striking defense was abysmal. Like, his hands, not only were they low, but they were pretty wide. Like, they were like beyond his shoulders. It was a weird way to watch somebody stand, especially if they're not an elite striker, and this guy clearly is not an elite striker. But he never quit in that fight, and he ended up finishing Potieria late in the second after Potieria gassed pretty hard. Now, I don't fault him for getting knocked down, because Ihor did that to a lot of guys throughout his UFC run despite not having a lot of success, but it happens. I like that Bellato stuck with it. I like that he found a way to win, but I do think that Jimmy Crute's going to be landing with considerably more power than Ihor did. I think that if Crute lands cleanly, it's over. I think that if he does land cleanly and knocks this guy down, even if he's not out, I think Crute's going to do a good job of getting on top, finding a submission, or at least controlling him from that position. I don't think Jimmy Crute's a guy that you could just get off y'all that easy, especially if you're rocked. And frankly, just narrative-wise, I think the writing's kind of on the wall for this one, right? Australia's own Jimmy Crute looks down and out. Will he ever fight again? If he does fight again, will he ever win again? It makes a good story. Like, you can close your eyes and see Jimmy Crute crying in a post-fight press conference, or when whoever is there, because I don't think it's going to be Joe Rogan. Maybe like DC or something comes in to interview him, and he's crying, talking about how hard it was to get to this point and whatever. You could see that in your mind pretty clearly. And everybody going crazy because the Aussie gets it done. So I'm going to take the dog here. I'm not surprised that he's the underdog because of recent performances, but you got to think. Jimmy Crute was fighting Anthony Smith, who was a perennial contender. Jamal Hill, one of the top fighters in the division. Alonzo Menefield, a tough fight for most guys. I think Alonzo Menefield would give Bellato a lot of trouble. So I would be surprised to see Rodolfo Bellato win this week. Give me James Crute to win this fight inside the distance, and we'll think about going back to Jimmy permanently later. Next, we have a fight between Jake Matthews. He's fighting Francisco Prado this week. Absolutely love this spot for Jake Matthews. I can't hide it. Francisco Prado's just too green, man. I don't think he's going to be in the UFC for much longer. I think his career path is he gets released from the UFC, goes back to South America, kicks the crap out of everybody, and then makes his way back to the UFC when he's in his late 20s and he's way better, and that's when he actually starts to make some noise. But at this stage, I think the fighters in the UFC are just a little bit too good. Jamie Malarkey outclassed him by controlling him on the mat with ease. Daniel Zellhuber battered him over 3 rounds. And Jake Matthews has been fighting in the UFC for a long time. very long time. He's been in the UFC since Robin Williams was alive. When he made his debut, Francisco Prado was 12 years old. Mind you, Jake Matthews is only 30. Been doing this. And his experience is going to be key here because he'll be able to use what worked for Zellhuber and what worked for Malarkey and implement that into his game plan this week because Prado is aggressive, likes to move forward. Matthews can counter effectively and punish that forward movement. We should also expect him to change levels this week and get some takedowns here. He's had a lot of success in the past with that grappling of his, especially earlier in his UFC career. So I think Matthews is a smash this week. I think he touches this kid up on the feet. I think he gets him to the mat pretty consistently. And I think he finishes him down there as well. Give me Jake Matthews to win this fight by submission. And he probably finds himself on the official betting article of the week. The official betting article can be found on kunithmma.com. You'll also find DFS strategy guide, lineup optimizer, data model, projections, all of that good stuff is on kunithmma.com, as well as the community parlay that did pretty well last week. You marry that with the official betting article, you would have been in a good spot. That could be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Back to the breakdown. Next we have a fight between Jack Jenkins and Gabriel Santos. I looked at the odds for this one. I was surprised. I thought for sure Jack Jenkins was going to be favored because this guy was favored to beat Chepe Mariscal after being on the right side of a robbery against Jamal Emmers in a fight where he was the underdog. Vegas don't know what they're looking at, or so I thought, because I could have swore that we were going to get the line of the year for Gabriel Santos, but Vegas said, they had their jeans high and tight on this one. And that's because they already know what's going down here. Gabriel Santos is damn good. He was on the wrong side of a robbery against Lerone Murphy in his debut, and Lerone Murphy's the truth. Just speaks to how well-rounded and how solid and how game this young man is. And he did well against David Onama before getting caught. That happens. David Onama, you got to kill that guy. But last time out, he finally got his first true UFC dub. He beat up on Ija, even turned in a 10-8 round in that fight. Clean sweep on the scorecards, mixed the martial arts really well with the grappling and the striking. And I expect a lot of that this week because Jack Jenkins throws really hard leg kicks. We know that. He doesn't do very much else all that well. It's leg kick or bust for him, realistically, and he's been taken down in every UFC fight, and now here he's given up size, he's given up length, given up youth. Outside of the low kick, Gabriel Santos to me looks better everywhere, and he's proven it against better competition, right? This isn't a layup in Herbert Burns. This isn't short notice debutant Don Shainis. I don't even know if Jamal Emmers is still on the roster at this point, so no, this is young, hungry competitor who I think is going to start fast and finish strong. I expect him to find Jack's back this week. Give me the Brazilian in this one. I think he wins with a rear naked choke. Give me Gabriel Santos by submission. Next we got a fight between Tom Nolan. He's fighting Viacheslav Borschev, who's got the worst takedown defense in the UFC, and I'm surprised that he's not fighting in like kickboxing or something. Maybe there's more money in MMA. I don't really know. All I know is that when guys want Slava on the mat, Slava ends up on the mat. Luckily for him, Tom Nolan doesn't really want that. Tom Nolan wants the strike, and that is Viacheslav Borshev's jam. He wants nothing more than to have the right dance partner in there. Somebody who's going to go strike for strike with him, and he's got it this week. And since his UFC run began, even if you go back to Contender Series, he's yet to be outstruck. If you want to say that Chase Hooper outstruck him because he dropped him, fine, that counts. But outside of that, largely, if you stand with this guy for too long, you're done. We saw Tom Nolan get dusted in under a minute in his debut against Nicholas Mata, and since then the UFC's done him some real favors as far as matchmaking goes, and I think his favor with the UFC has ran out a little bit. Because for them to give him this fight, I think it's punishment for not finishing his last opponent, the guy who he should have put out, a lot older, long layoff. He should have put Alex Reyes out, and he didn't. He went the distance. So I think they said, all right, well, you're going to get your bump up in competition. Here you go, and Viacheslav Borschev is going to be that guy that puts it on him. I think Slava gets him out of there in one. He's got power to even put you out with a body shot. He's got the technique to get to his spot in short time as well. Give me Viacheslav Borschev to win this fight by knockout. Next we have Cong Wang. She's fighting Bruna Brasil, the fighting nerds Bruna Brasil, might I add. And just to speak on that a little bit, I remember last week during the broadcast they're talking about Mayra Bueno Silva. They're like, she's the first fighting nerd in the UFC. They don't claim her at all. I ain't never seen her with the glasses, not once. But I have seen Bruna Brasil with the glasses on, and with great eyewear comes great responsibility. We all know that. And do I think they could put together the right game plan to get by Wang Cong this week? No. I don't think so. Frankly, I think Wang Cong got exposed last time out, right? Got a little overconfident against a solid veteran, got caught as a result being defensively irresponsible. She gets rocked with a head kick before she can recover. Straight right hand puts her down. Fernandez finds her back. It's over. Wang Cong loses that fight as a minus 1,300 favorite. And I'm telling you now, we should be happy about it. We couldn't bet on her at that price, but this week, going inside the distance, it's a lot more doable. Because despite getting somewhat exposed, I don't think Bruna Brasil is going to be able to handle the speed and the power and the straight punches coming down the middle from Wang Cong the way that Gabby Fernandez did, because Gabby Fernandez is kind of a tank. Plus, Brazil's moving up in weight, which I do like, but physicality will take a little bit of time to get used to, and I think Cong Wang's just going to start too hot for her to really even adjust. So I think Cong Wang lands hard, lands fast, gets her out of there in the first round. Give me Cong to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight between the younger brother of UFC champion Ilia Topuria, Aleksandre Topuria. He's fighting Colby Thicknesse, crazy name. It's baby Topuria all day, every day here. I don't know who this Colby fella is or how thick his family must be. Pretty thick, if I had to guess. But the odds and the name tell us everything we need to know. He's getting set up here. Give me baby Topuria to win this fight inside the distance. Let's move on. Come on. Next, we have a fight between Kody Steele. He's fighting Rongzhu. Kody Steele, despite being older, looks like the younger brother of Rongzhu when we look at them side by side. I'm going to tell you now, Kody Steele's kind of the man. Lots of hype surrounding him as far as Contender Series debut went. Had a lot of success in MMA prior to that. Even more so with jiu-jitsu, rich grappling background for him, which you would think in MMA would be his bread and butter, but it's really not. The man loves to strike. And I think it's because he's such an explosive athlete that he's hurting guys pretty often, and that tells me that there's always a backup plan here, right? I prefer to strike even though my grappling might even be better, which is fantastic. You really can't ask for a much better prospect than that, because he's a guy who's going to put it on you. Even if Rongzhu wants to take his opponent down this week, going to be tough sledding. It's going to be hard to get him to the mat. Once he's on the mat, that's when the danger really starts. And maybe Rongzhu tries to keep this one standing. He was desperately trying to get his opponents to the mat early in his UFC career in that first run in the UFC, and it just really wasn't working. Since then, he's leaned way more heavily on his striking. He's improved his striking as well. Even against Chris Padilla, he didn't look terrible, but he did get hit with that nasty elbow that caught him on the eye. His eye immediately blew up, and he moved to 1-3 in the UFC. And that one win, we really got to go back here. It was against Brandon Jenkins, who really had no business being in the promotion and was quickly removed from the promotion as a result. So I'll tell you, I don't think Rongzhu is really all that good. I think he can continue to smash guys on Eastern promotions, right, over in China, but against the level of competition he's going to see in the UFC, not so much. And I think Kody Steele looks great in this fight. I think he lands heavy punches, dictates whether or not this fight is on the feet or at striking range, or I just repeated myself twice. Oscar, fix this. No, I think he chooses whether or not this fight's on the ground or standing. I think it's going to be completely on Kody Steele's terms this week. I think he moves to 8-0, and I think he wins inside the distance. I think the UFC has set us up for a lot of finishes on this card, so don't be surprised when you see most of these fights going under. You might want to start playing that throughout the card as well. But give me Kody Steele to win this fight inside the distance. Next, we have a fight between Kevin Jousset. He's fighting Jonathan Mikhailov this week. He's welcoming Mikhailov to the UFC. He's making his debut. Mikhailov coming off of Contender Series where he locked up a triangle. Very slick. He went from his opponent's back, circling around him, getting that triangle cinched up pretty quickly. He ends up sleeping his opponent there. Takes no damage. Very impressive stuff. Now, most of that fight was spent in the clinch or scrambling on the mat, and that's how a lot of his fights end up looking. I go back, I watch his fights, they all pretty much look the same. He sells out to close distance, gets that clinch, and he's looking for whatever kind of takedown he can. Like, the dude's not afraid to change levels to look for a single leg or a double leg. He's not afraid to look for trips. He's not afraid to look for throws, even if he's going over his own body, risking the chance of somebody ending up on top of him. He normally finds a way out. Dude's clearly got tons of heart as well, can dig deep. He's crazy strong in that clinch. You can tell, like, when he starts getting his hands locked and squeezing guys in, they just kind of accept it because they have no other choice. And I think he's pretty solid. I think there's a lot to like about Mikhailov coming into the UFC. Now, on the other side, Kevin Jousset has already established himself as a solid welterweight in the UFC. He's coming off a loss to Brian Battle, but it's excusable. Brian Battle is the dark horse of 170 pounds. He ends up losing that fight because Brian Battle just poured it on. He just would not take his foot off the gas, and we saw Jousset start to wilt under that crazy pressure, and he might this week because Mikhailov is not going to stop coming at him. But it's up to Kevin Jousset to make this a Kevin Jousset fight, and what I mean by that is he normally does a really good job of managing distance because he fights long, chews up the lead leg of his opponent, he stays on his feet as well, and if the fight does hit the mat, because he's getting it there, maybe with a throw. That judo background of his may serve him really well this week, because again, you got Mikhailov who's selling out for that clinch. Maybe he does get into that over-under position, and then Kevin Jousset takes him for a ride. And from there, he can choose to stay in top position, or he could just get back to his feet and get back to that striking advantage that he has. Because for as much as Mikhailov looks good with the clinch, with the grappling, with the scrambles, on the feet, he doesn't look that great. From what I've seen, he doesn't appear to land with a whole lot of power. Defensively, it's not great. He does leave himself open a lot because he throws a lot of looping strikes, maybe just trying to score. Maybe he doesn't have a whole lot of faith in his jab, cross, or straight punches down the middle. Maybe he's looking for those hooks over the top so that one of the hooks he can change into just grabbing the clinch. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't look very fluid. And Kevin Jousset does look fluid on the feet. So I think that he's going to chew him up with jabs and straight punches and chew up that lead leg, because Mikhailov likes to be the one coming forward. So I actually expect Kevin Jousset to kind of cruise here. I think this guy gives him everything he needs to look good. I don't think this fight is a finish, though, like many of the others. I think this goes the full 15. So give me the vet. Give me Kevin Jousset to win this fight by decision. Next, we have a fight between debutant Quillan Salkild. He's fighting Anshul Jubli, which means it's Anshul Jubli fight week, which means Quillan Salkild wins inside the distance. And lastly, and real quick, again, if you haven't liked the video, we're trying to get some more likes. Just like it. It's free. Young Sung Park, one of the hardest nicknames in the sport. Peace of mind. It's hard. He's putting his undefeated record on the line this week against Alphabet Soup. I like Young Sung Park quite a bit. Has finished 8 of his 9 wins. Tons of heart as well. In 2 of his last 3 fights, he was dropped with strikes and went on to finish those fights himself. What worries me, though, is the fact that he has been dropped, and by the caliber opponent who has dropped him, because he hasn't really faced a solid pro yet. Now, on the other side, Nurmagomedov Tumandemberel, he's at least competed against Carlos Hernandez, who's a UFC vet, and if you look at the record, you'll think, oh, Tumandemberel, he ended up losing that fight, but he shouldn't have lost that fight. It was a split decision, and frankly, a bad decision. I think the line is a bit wide here. I think Tumandemberel can end up having success at striking range because he's got big power. Park is hittable. He has been chinned before by lesser competition, and he's got that bend, don't break kind of durability, but all it takes is one from the right guy, and I think Tumandemberel can dial it up this week. So I think we start the night with a juicy dog, springing the upset, taking that O off of Park, just like his O was taken last time out, almost like a revenge O taking, if you know what I mean. So give me Nurmagomedov Tumandemberel to win this fight by knockout. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. I will see you later in the week for final picks. Let's go.